My guest today has an interesting job. She's part of a network that is looking at pioneering churches for people she calls the nuns and the duns. And that is people who have quit religion or have quit faith for a variety of reasons. I think this is going to be an interesting conversation. Elle Pyke, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So I know when people hear the nuns, they're thinking like N-U-N-S. We're not talking about a Catholic order of women who are celibate.
No,
you're
not.
N-O-N-E-S. So what are the nuns?
Yeah, in 2013, the Pew Research Center, they did a study on religion in Canada, and what they found was that 24% of Canadians actually chose no religious affiliation. And they've been studying this kind of stuff for a long time, but it actually has become the fastest growing religious designation across the entire country.
Wow.
Yeah, so people who would rather just choose no religion over any other religion. So the New Leaf Network that I'm a part of, we started looking at that and wondering, wow, what are we going to do about that? Because that information was from 2013, so one can only assume that that percentage is actually even higher today.
In the last 4 years, and you're not just talking about the nuns, you're talking about the duns. So now who are the duns?
Right, so the duns would be people who would say that they are done with church. So there's a lot of great information that comes from the United States about this, but the best that we've got here in Canada was a 2011 study from, I think it was called Hemorrhaging Faith, and it really was talking about young adults. So the stat at that time for the evangelical church was 2 out of every 3 young adults who had grown up in the church, had been a weekly attender, were leaving the church.
Wow.
And so when you kind of put that category together, the nuns and the duns, it shows kind of a compelling picture of what's happening across the religious landscape in Canada. And we've got the sense that we probably need to do something about that. If we don't like what we're getting, then we have to change what we're doing. So.
Now, when you're talking about the duns, when you say that young people are leaving church, I don't know if leaving church always means leaving faith. So did they break that down at all?
I'm not aware that they did. And it's kind of same for the people who would say that they're not religious. There's not a lot of great work that's being done in that category to understand, does that mean that they are atheist or agnostic or spiritual but not religious? So the New Leaf Network is listening to and working with a number of professors of sociology actually across Canada. Joel Thiessen from Ambrose University, Sarah Wilkins-Laflemme from the University of Waterloo, because a lot more research needs to happen in this demographic, especially as it grows.
And I know what you said, it's experimental what you're doing. This is a new work, so it's just starting, but you're listening. What kinds of things are you hearing?
That's a great question. You know, when it comes to the people who would say that they're not religious, oftentimes they're not even asking the questions that we assume they are. For us, it's really difficult to think that people wouldn't be wondering about faith, wouldn't be wondering about a higher calling or a purpose, but that's actually the case because a lot of our friends who are not religious, they've never grown up with that. So they don't even have the understanding that that should be something that they would be thinking about. When it comes to the duns, a lot of stats that I've seen is people are sensing that they don't sense God in church anymore. They don't sense that it's a welcoming place, and they don't feel like it's a place where they can openly doubt and wrestle with their questions. And so, again, a lot of that information comes from the States, but as we're starting to see this trend happen in Canada, it's something that we're trying to pay attention to.
And I think it's so easy to get defensive in a sense, it's like, hey,
absolutely.
wait a minute, but I think having a listening ear is one thing I appreciate about what you're doing, because we need to be humble, we need to have an open heart, and I think, we can say, well, culture's shifting, but I wonder, as people of faith, can we own any of the responsibility for how people are being turned off about those spiritual discussions? What do you think?
I think we have to. I think the great thing about faith is when we look at our heritage as Christians, we've always been people who critique in the best possible way, because when we critique, then we can learn and we can do better. So when we're open and honest about our failings, just like we have to be as human beings, we're able to do things better. We're able to learn from that. And I think if you think about even in your own personal life, I know it's true in mine, I've learned a lot from my failures, maybe even more than I did from my successes. So I think that's a really important thing. It's not to say that there's not great things happening in Canada. Of course, God's moving. But on the overall, the church is in decline, and I think it's our generation, and we have to pay attention.
Oh, I just love that. Well, we're going to continue this conversation when we come back. What surprised Elle the most about this diverse group of people she calls spiritual entrepreneurs? We'll be right back.